I'm coming up on the Mark Samuni show on Warney in minutes. White privilege CC Tariq Nasheed https tcogqtwwictxj.
No, we know Republicans will cut taxes, it's the only thing they do. We also know they will blow off the issue we rate more important than cutting taxes. Voters, do something about illegal immigration. Republicans, hey look, we cut taxes.
A spokesperson for a president who is obligated to the teachers' unions.
Unrelated question. What is this president's view toward the loyalty that teachers' unions should have towards students? This president is a strong supporter of unions, public sector unions. Is a teachers' union's obligation to the workers and their concerns about safety? Or is the teachers' union obligation also to students?
Well, I can't speak to the obligations or I'm not a spokesperson for the teachers' union. I'm a spokesperson for the President of the United States. So I can convey to you that his commitment is to the students and to the teachers and to the parents who want to have their kids back in school. And he wants to do that safely. And that's what his focus is on, and that's the role he can play from the federal government. Go ahead, David.
Just back on the...
The column is posted https tcofl08q8qgz2j.
CPAC isn't safe, it's matchlocks lobbying clients masquerading as conservatives.
This isn't your older brother's CPAC anymore. https tcofxvlsumtlwc.
Maybe, but that's not what your video shows. It doesn't show much of anything. I think this is the same video you used to show Officer Sicknick being hit with a fire extinguisher. Tiger Woods again.
What 20-year-old recent red and woke studies writes CNN's headlines? I'm beginning to think these are all parodies. https tcozwwd7hfgis.
Well, read this article on monstrous college bullies who used to joke, "Don't let a rich student report you because if you do you're gone," said Mark Patino, a janitor.
Also note that the racist bully isn't even a foundational American black. She is of course an immigrant. We owe you nothing. CC Tariq Nasheed.
https tco23xoqbw8zl.
Love never said anything about poor people. https tcodghicxgbkl.
I would cry if you started wearing a cowboy hat.
Jeremy 84727. At least DennisPrager sort of figured it out. Time to prove that liberals ruin everything by ruining the side of this railing. Effin' husky technically based, although I doubt whoever wrote that knows there is a difference.
healthy human strong loved near they are more than likely white, live in the suburbs and haven't done any actual political work other than spamming Twitter replies. https://tcogYHR7B9IPJ.
Hope they fell in the concrete and got stuck after. Imagine not respecting yourself enough to get disc brakes for your bike.
MTSKULLCRUSHER autocorrect is bullying me today.
At least Sebastian is being honest. https://TCO8U6WLDF0 Hz.
And the pumpkins, you can get a decent kit for under 30, makes a huge difference.
https://TCO4BF1.
You see, it's socialism when the government gives out aid that I don't need it, but capitalism is when they give aid to me.
Jack's son left. A lot of them would willingly turn down aid they need if it meant people they don't like would get it also.
Also, funding universal healthcare is socialism, but capitalism is when you spend $619 billion on the military when America would still have the biggest on earth if you spent less than half of that.
Abroad Sashanoka, it's impressive to hate minorities so much that you would rather have crippling medical debt and low wages. It's HL Amber Tompkins, true you have to spend more to do it properly, although even a very basic kit will be an upgrade from the V-brakes a Walmart bike comes with. Console founds they even tried changing the colors to make up for it, that's dedication.
Left Occidental using Mandela to spread conservatism is a self-of on its own. Try to pause and think about this ratio instead.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I call for a motion to adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The noes have it. The motion is not adopted.
Ask for a roll call vote.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered, and members will record their votes by electronic device.
Landburn 1776. If you're in the DMV and need somewhere to temporarily stay, a lot of Airbnbs on the VA side are way cheaper. Wishing you the best.
WHTTPS://TCO9MF40A1WJ.
She's 46 and in Congress yet still hasn't managed to open a biology textbook. Embarrassing. We need the Equality Act to pass. https://TCOTPFLIO4UE.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's track record on understanding science or just reality in general isn't the best. https://TCOWLIRSQNYXO.
https://TCOWDNYVPIT4H.
A Tale of Two Parts. https://TCORSJF03 model.
These niggas won't hold me back. 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 These hoes won't hold me back. These hoes won't hold me back. These niggas won't hold me back. These niggas won't hold me back.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me and I walk alone. I walk this empty street.
Well, look at that, Mitt got one right.
My take on the media's sudden silence about kids in cages. What happened, guys? https://TCOVDGBN2MRZY.
Cuomo ex-aide accuses Scandal Plag New York governor of pervasive sexual harassment in bombshell essay. https://TCOUJJFWRMULB Fox News.
Liz Cheney knows she can't get re-elected in Wyoming because the people there hate her, so she's trying hard to make sure her new friends at CNN will hire her once she loses her primary Lincoln project. Liz is less popular with Republicans than Andrew Cuomo is at nursing homes.
That's up to CPAC. I would care about President Trump and the extent to which following
extent to which it fell on January 6th, I don't really playing a role in the future.
That high note? Thank you all very much.
I wonder if anyone is going to bring up years of Russia hoax, lies and disinformation about Trump supposedly being an agent of Russia in the disinformation hearing Oregon. Does CNN and MSNBC get a pass as they seem to function as agents of the radical left and the Democrat Party?
Yikes, that's a no-no. Cuomo, is Chris going to cover this tonight? Maybe you guys can laugh about it with an oversized QTIP and make it go away.
Disinformation hearing witness Soledad O'Brien falls for disinformation. https://tcodfpklim0.
It shouldn't surprise anyone that Liz Cheney was anti-Trump friendly. Fire runs in the family.
A new poll found that 73 of likely GOP voters say leaders should be more like former President Trump. The findings echo results from other surveys that found that Republicans still view Trump quite favorably. https://tco92pd1
Scam alert. I wonder what BLM donors think about this now that the Marxists in charge have released their financials. Anyone who has been watching won't be surprised. My thoughts. https://tcosbb9nc9ysw.
I'm hearing from people in New York that Andrew Cuomo is considering a preemptive pardon for himself in the nursing home scandal. If true, maybe he goes for a tougher and throw another pardon in there for the sexual harassment. Cuomo.
We no longer believe all women.
So basically the Biden administration reversed a Trump policy out of spite, incentivized mass migration of unaccompanied children at the border, and are now keeping those unaccompanied children in CBP holding cells. So woke. https://tcooe58lx6kt4. This week in the House we are debating a so-called COVID relief bill spearheaded by President Biden and Democrats, but read the fine print, only 9 of the 19 trillion actually goes to fund our public health. More details from House GOP live soon. https://tco5zxyrk785h.
Republicans offered 286 amendments to President Biden's massive $19 trillion spending blowout. Democrats accepted 2 of them. So much for Biden's calls for unity. https://tcl7uvkim.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for being here today. We have a guest with us, the Republican leader of the Budget Committee, who's going to talk in just a minute about the package, the $1.9 trillion package that is going to be on the floor, and detail the real difficulties and the real problems with that package. We also are today recognizing that although we have seen from President Biden some, I think, effective demonstration of compassion and I think real caring about what's happening across the country with respect to COVID, unfortunately, that compassion and that caring, which, and I say again, we honor and recognize, and many of us have family members that we've lost to COVID, and we appreciate that very much. But that compassion that the President has shown in his remarks, unfortunately, you cannot in any way, there's no consistency between that and between the policies that we're seeing so far. And so when you look at things like the executive orders, and in particular, the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline, the executive orders banning oil and gas drilling on federal lands, those executive orders are nothing short of heartless. And it is really important, we want to make sure, particularly for a state like mine, that the administration understands the impact of those kinds of orders. The extent to which when you ban new permits for fossil fuel exploration on public lands, it kills economies, it kills jobs, it means that we don't have funding for our schools. And it is important for the American people to understand and recognize that no matter what you're hearing from this administration, what they are doing is a war on the West, and it is a war on the American worker. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their livelihoods, and we as Republicans are committed to turning that around. We are committed to standing against those policies, to making sure that we are able to get access to our fossil fuels, and making sure that we're able to bring jobs back and get our economy growing as we come back from the devastation of COVID. I want to say just one more thing before I turn things over to Mr. Smith. Today is the 30th anniversary of the beginning of the ground war in Desert Storm. It began on February 24th, 1991. And I want everybody today to take a minute to remember those brave Americans who fought in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, the brave Americans who led us then, and just commemorate the fact that was 30 years ago today. It was a 100-hour ground war, and my colleague, Ms. Stefanik's, got a resolution. I hope we will have bipartisan support for that resolution to commemorate the victory and the sacrifice of those people who fought in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. With that, I will turn things over to my colleague from the Budget Committee, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Liz. It's very simple. We're here today because Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden decided to use a pandemic to push forward a progressive wish list items to reward political allies, friends, and donors at the expense of the American working class. If this package was clearly about crushing the virus, then why is less than 9% of all total spending actually used to put shots in people's arms? If this package was clearly about making sure that schools opened, why is it that less than 5% of all spending for schools will only be spent this year? If this package was about creating more jobs, why is it that this package spends more than 25%, according to the Congressional Budget Office, on items that kills millions of jobs? If this package was not a progressive wish list, why does it spend hundreds of millions of dollars on pet projects in New York City and in San Francisco, like bridges and trailways? If this package was truly about helping all Americans, why did they change the bipartisan budget formula used in all the other COVID packages to reward the blue state governors? One governor that's being recalled and another governor that hid disclosure of how many deaths that were in nursing homes. They're clearly rewarding their friends, their donors, and their partisan agenda. This is the wrong plan at the wrong time for all the wrong reasons. I yield back.
Now I'd like to yield to our whip, Mr. Scalise.
House Republicans have consistently fought to help those hardworking families that are struggling, whether they're trying to get back to work, trying to have their businesses reopen, or whether they're demanding that their kids be taught in the classroom. Those are the things that we've been fighting for, as well as to fight to get more vaccines in the arms of people. Unfortunately, that's not what we're going to be voting on this week. That's not what this $1.9 trillion liberal wish list giveaway bill does. And that's why we're strongly opposing it. And we're also pushing to expose just what is really in this bill. You know, back during Obamacare, Speaker Pelosi famously said, you've got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. You know, people are starting to find out what's in this bill. And they're also finding out what's not in this bill. They know that this bill does not dedicate real money to reopen schools. In fact, the press secretary for President Biden admitted that over the weekend, that the $130+ billion going to school doesn't even have to be used to safely reopen schools. Even the CBO pointed out more than 95% of that money won't even be spent this year. Parents don't want to wait another year to have their kids safely in the classroom. In fact, the science strongly says that schools need to be reopened, can safely be reopened, and points out the damage, long-term damage being done to our nation's children if they're not in the classroom. Estimates are that only about 40% of America's students are learning in the classroom every day. That means tens of millions of students are not getting the same educational opportunities. That's not something that's just going to last with them these next few weeks. That's something that could last and hold them back the rest of their lives. We owe it to those children to open schools, and this bill ought to be focused on opening schools. And unfortunately, Democrats have pushed against those measures to do it. You know, we had amendments in committee to do things like ensure that we can reopen schools. Ensure, by the way, we had an amendment to say let's go not to 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days of Biden's presidency, but to go to 200 million vaccinations. Every Democrat voted against that amendment. How can you call it COVID relief when you oppose the measures to actually increase vaccinations against COVID? Just the other day, President Biden challenged Republicans to show him the waste. What would you cut, President Biden said. My response to President Biden would be, how much time do you have, Mr. President, to go through the litany of things in this bill that have nothing to do with COVID? Who said a subway to Silicon Valley has anything to do with COVID? Who said a $15 minimum wage that estimates show would kill over $50 billion in economic activity and jobs in America has anything to do with COVID? Who says a state bailout of $350 billion to blue states like California? California in this bill would get over $40 billion in bailout money when they just announced they have a $10 billion surplus. So why, Mr. President, would you want to borrow money from our children and grandchildren to bail out failed states and to keep schools closed for another year when the science says open schools today? So my challenge to President Biden would be work with Republicans to actually help families who are struggling, to reopen small businesses, to get kids back in the classroom, not one day a week in 6 months, but today. The science says they can do it, the will is there, and by the way, there are tens of billions of dollars already passed in previous bipartisan bills to safely reopen schools. That's where the focus should be. Unfortunately, this bill falls far flat of those objectives, and that's why we strongly oppose it. Let's fight for those families, let's help those kids get back in school, and let's defeat this virus working together. And with that, now I'll bring up our leader, Kevin McCarthy.
Thank you, Steve. I want to thank the Republican leader of the budget, Jason Smith, for his work, his committee's work on this. You've watched us in the last year 5 times come together in a bipartisan way for the American people. It is now all changed. It is now a partisan route. I think all Americans agree exactly what Republicans wanted to have happen. We want to go back to work, back to school, back to health. Unfortunately, this bill is too costly, too corrupt, and too liberal. Only 9% goes to COVID. We watched the swamp come back to Washington. $100 million for a tunnel in Silicon Valley just outside of Speaker Pelosi's district. Or a bridge for Schumer. Our money for schools, that 2/3 of it cannot be spent until 2023. This is the wrong path, and this is not what President Biden said he would do at the inaugural. Republicans want to work together as we have before, but unfortunately the times have changed here. We believe in accountability. We believe in spending money when it comes to COVID. I've watched what they do here. This seems like a payout for those who agree with them politically. That's a corrupt system, and that's wrong. The American public deserves better, and that's exactly what Republicans will propose. So that's the question. Yes, ma'am.
Are your concerns with Speaker Pelosi's setup of the January 6th commission as it's been proposed?
Well, it'll be the same concerns that those who were on the 9/11 commission who led it with Hamilton and Kane. If you listen to their own words, Speaker Pelosi is doing it all wrong. First, it's not bipartisan, 7-4. Secondly, they don't allow subpoena power for the minority and the majority to work together. I mean, I would take those two leaders who I hold in high esteem, the Democrat and the Republican, who carried out a 9/11 commission, who did it in a manner that people trusted coming out. I mean, when I look at the first actions the Speaker has taken with their own general to look at what has went on, and you look at his tweets and others, it seems most of this is politically driven, and it seems like she's setting up a system to fail. And that's not from my words. Those are from those who headed up the 9/11 commission. Mine is very clear, 3 simple things. has to be equal, 50-50, Republican, Democrat appointment. It has to be equal, just like on 9/11, the power of subpoenas of which way we go. I wouldn't predetermine what to do. I've been very clear about after January 6th that we came out first with the 9/11 Commission, just as Hamilton and Kane has said in a clear way. It's only Speaker Pelosi who's trying to make this thing partisan and others.
Democrats want to bring back earmarks. What are your thoughts on that? Can you give your comments to support these things? Republicans right now don't.
I know the Democrats have said that in the last Congress as well. I haven't seen anything new. Anytime someone would approach that, they'd have to bring new accountability to it. We'd look at it that nature, but until that time, we wouldn't take anything up till we see what they're proposing. Yes?
Equality Act, I just wanted to ask you about. Democrats want to pass, certain Republicans say that it's only an attack. It's not only an attack on girls, women's sports, but also an attack on persons. Those are the
Very clear. I mean, if you look at Biden's appointments to cabinet members, suing nuns and others, this really seems like an onslaught against freedom of religion, girls' sports as well, and others. And now the Democrats have been taking it further. Can you imagine being an elected member of Congress, putting your name on a letter to a cable industry, telling them what they should have on their shows? Or sending it to Amazon that created a company based upon selling books, telling them not to sell books in America, and that you're a member of Congress. Interesting to me of how far they have gone and how much further they want to go. Yes, sir. How are you today?
Does your state need money?
Does my state need money? Well, I see California just came out with a $10 billion surplus. I see how California has been shut down. If California needs money, I'd like to see what is actually requested instead of changing the flow of the system here to reward states who stayed shut down instead of those who are working. I think a more surgical way of getting all the data to see what is needed and who needs it is a better way to do it than throwing blankets money out.
No, you don't think so?
No, I think California could need money, but if we're dealing with a $10 billion surplus, I would like to sit down with California and actually see where money is needed. I will tell you what California needs. They need to bring in who's ever doing West Virginia's vaccination, because Gavin Newsom is not doing it well. In my Central Valley, where we are today, we're set up where we could provide 5,000 a day. He was just in there. He cannot provide us the vaccine. So what California needs is probably a new governor. The management is poor. The schools are shut down. I'm glad you brought this point up, because in my own school district in Kern County, the D's and F's for this year have increased by 14%. I just read, was it in Virginia, the Academy of Pediatricians. The increase for children, anxiety, depression, obesity, all in the higher than the 90%. So this governor continues to keep us shut down. So before money would be provided to this governor, as we provided before, he withheld the money to go to the rural areas. He used it as a political ploy. So before I would send money to California, I'd rather send money directly to the counties that are needed. Oh, good point. I love the assertiveness, but she is correct. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
In addition to the 9/11 Commission, Democrats have said they'll be...
You're kind of smiling under there, huh?
Okay. Well, you know, just for myself.
Yes.
In addition to the 9/11 Commission, Democrats have said they'll need a security supplemental. Have they been negotiating with you guys on that?
They have done as much negotiation on that as they have done on the COVID or anything else. No, not at all. And they've done the same amount that President Biden has done as well, roughly. Yes. Look, I've talked about that phone call on the day of on national news. I'm not talking about it anymore. The whip's working it. I haven't seen a Republican yet that found something in there that they would agree with. I think all Republicans believe in three simple things. They want a bill that puts us back to work, back to school, and back to health. This bill is too costly, too corrupt, and too liberal.
And there was a Democrat defection in the Budget Committee, so Democrats are already voting against this bill.
Yes, he should.
That's up to CPAC. I've been clear on President Trump and the extent to which following January 6th, I don't believe that he should be going along with
On that high note, thank you all very much.
I'm headed to the House floor now to defend the First Amendment against censorship from Democrats. They are reading from the same script used in countries like China to silence speech they disagree with. Tune in here. https://tco5zxyrk785h.
The greatest threat to free speech today is not a law from Congress which is bound by the First Amendment. The greatest threat is politicians who bully private companies to silence dissenting views. https://tconglgqqwa5u.
The slimmest of margins in November. In fact, it's the slimmest Democrat majority since 1875. A mere 5 seats, 31,718 votes is what determines the majority. Their victory in the other branches were also tight, 50-50 on the Senate side. Usually when one party has a tiny majority, they recognize that governing requires compromise. Not this majority. Less than 2 months into controlling the House, despite promising to solve problems and restore democracy, Democrats have proven that their primary goal is not governing, but grievance. The politics of censorship, not common ground. In January, they eliminated the motion to recommit, the last chance for the minority to improve legislation, without a single Republican vote. It will go down in history as the first time in the history of this body that a majority did that. Deny the minority, the millions of constituents, their voice. Already millions have lost their voice in Congress due to the brazen partnership. What Democrats are doing this week is even worse. Today they'll hold a subcommittee hearing that will focus on broadcasters and cable news. Devotion to journalistic integrity. This explanation should concern every American. It has never been Congress's role to define and enforce journalistic standards. The First Amendment prohibits the government from controlling what the press says. But Democrats are trying to give themselves the power to dictate what you can read and watch in your own home. And their assault on free speech goes beyond today's disgraceful hearing. On Monday, Representatives Eshoo and McNerney sent a letter to 12 cable, streaming, and satellite companies, essentially threatening them to remove Fox News, Newsmax, and One American News Network from their airwaves. Here is just a quick snapshot of the answers they're demanding from the carriers. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order.
Now here is just a quick snapshot of the answers they're demanding from the carriers. What moral or ethical principles do you apply in deciding which channels to carry or when to take adverse actions against a channel? What steps did you take to monitor, respond to, or reduce the spread of disinformation, including encouragement or incitement of violence by channels your company disseminates to millions of Americans? Then the other question, coming from Congress in a majority of a committee, are you planning to continue to carry Fox News, Newsmax, one American news network, both now and beyond any contract renewal date? If so, why? Now, I'm not an attorney, but some people have asked me, does that reach an ethical complaint against these members by using undue influence? I don't know. I guess the Ethics Committee would have to decide that. These are members of Congress who are using their official position to coerce and control the information Americans can watch and access in their own homes. They're demanding more censorship, more deplatforming, and more control of what Americans can watch. In their letter, Congresswoman Eshoo and McNerney suggest that censorship is necessary because conservative views are not only different, but they are dangerous. This is not only false, it is the same script used in countries like China to silence speech they disagree with. Democrats would bring those same socialist standards to America. Yet those standards are dangerous, vague, and easily abused. They have no place here. Democrats' action this week make it clear that the greatest threat to free speech today is not a law from Congress, which is bound by the First Amendment. The greatest threat is politicians who bully private companies to silence dissenting views. The sad part is, this isn't the only Democrats who've done this. They sent a letter to a company of Amazon that was created to sell books, to tell them not to sell books. Lastly, beyond these serious threats to free speech, the irony of Democrats' action this week should not be lost on us. For the last 4 years, we were told that the greatest danger to free speech was President Trump. To underscore this accusation, the liberal Legacy newspaper in Washington adopted its first official slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." As usual, the heated rhetoric from the other side was off base, badly. The same party that is now worried about misinformation, rumor mills, and conspiracy theory hotbeds was comfortable with endorsing destructive and false narratives for 4 years. Back in August, Congresswoman Eshoo herself basically alleged that the Trump administration was intentionally attacking the U.S. Postal Service. She called it election theft and a campaign of sabotage. How about Congressman Adam Schiff? For years, he said he had more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion. We all found that to be false. Nevertheless, networks like MSNBC continue to perpetuate the baseless accusation. I wonder if they sent a letter there. Or how about our own Speaker Pelosi, who said in 2017, and I quote, "Our election was hijacked. There is no question." Mr. Speaker, the American people are capable of making decisions about how best to live their lives. They deserve to decide how to take care of their families or open their businesses during a pandemic. And they deserve to decide to watch the news, judge the information they choose, and draw their own conclusion about its accuracy. They need us to trust them, not to try to control them. If Democrats accepted robust debate, they would find that more people would trust Washington. Mr. Speaker, this is a body that is using its power to try to determine what books could be printed, what shows could be seen, and what can be said. Mr. Speaker, we've debated on this floor the things that happen in China. And in China, if you try to buy an airline ticket, you could have the money, but they have an app there. And they say, first we have to check. They had people in their own press said, "I'm sorry, you can't take the plane." Why? You have said something that government doesn't like. You should apologize. The reporter apologized, but the government thought it wasn't sincere enough. To me, it's something I would fight because I believe in free speech. I thought that was far-fetched in a faraway land.
I never thought it would be written on paper in the U.S. Congress and the power of powerful members of a committee that oversees jurisdiction would threaten people of why they carry a network and will they carry that network in the future, and if so, why. I never thought I'd see members of Congress to use their power to threaten others to go against the First Amendment. Mr. Speaker, we will not stand for it, nor will the American public. This is not a partisan issue. This is a constitutional issue. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does...
We should be providing incentives to get Americans safely back to school, back to work, back to health. Instead, the Democrats want to pay off states to stay locked down, people to stay home from work, politicians to vote for this monstrosity. https://tco8pygpdbxw6.
I think the three things we need to do: back to work, back to school, back to health. So I would spend more money on COVID. I wouldn't reward states. What they're doing is they're reversing the order of how they provide resources to the states. Those that actually shut down get more money. California just came out with a $10 billion surplus, and they're going to get the biggest chunk of the money. But states with low unemployment that stayed open are actually going to be in a negative ability of receiving resources. So I would focus, and I would give incentives to open up schools. I would give incentives for COVID vaccines and others. I would give incentives that this country starts working again. And I would be more surgical, because when they just put out these checks, there's going to be people that have high income but aren't working at that time that are receiving them, and those who really need it are not. And then go back on to small businesses that have been hurt the worst through all this, to raise a minimum wage that isn't based upon locality is only going to do more damage and more job losses. Look, we don't need another study. We know what happened in Washington. When Seattle, which is wealthy, they lost jobs when they raised it. We watched in Long Beach, two grocery stores, they closed once they said give them $4 more for working during the pandemic. This is real economic problems that they're going to hurt the lowest income, and this isn't going to those who need it most.
Serious question: what does a 112 million subway near Nancy Pelosi's district have to do with COVID relief? https://tcohtwp65wtob.
Dear Democrats, stop calling it a COVID relief plan. A better name would be the Pelosi payoff. https://tcoylewvbakje. Heard of Bret Easton Ellis? His had a big impact on shaping our culture. He pushes the envelope and if it really annoys the left, his politics are unclear, but it doesn't matter. BC, I think he believes in free speech and his right movies basically stink now. From NBC's Nurses program, talk about over-the-top in-your-face prejudice and hate pushes every ignorant stereotype in the book.
America has become pretty much overnight the most uptight country in the world. Chill out.
Taking a picture used to be special. Film was expensive. Years could go by without a picture. Now with a selfie everyone can be a model. We take 100 selfies before lunch, not some creepy photographer objectifying people. We objectify ourselves. Think.
Again with another go-kart on Mars. Let's get Americans up there already.
These two are too much. They want to reshoot the Oprah interview because the Queen fired them. I don't follow these things all that closely, but even I knew the Queen had fired their asses a year ago. High maintenance, so let's face it, no one has ever seen an episode of Suits. https://tco2oip8kp. Some people are busting my chops because I shoot my mouth off on Twitter. That's like telling someone to quiet down at a stadium. Perhaps the complainers would be more comfortable in the arts and crafts section of Pinterest, which I still don't understand.
The more that harass they President Trump and his family with BS investigations Manhattan on New York State Ag, the more they will have to lie about them. The more you dig, the more you see they are generous and law-abiding. Mueller spent 2 years and $50 million, found nothing. Amazing observation from Bill O'Reilly. You get more Antifa in one night than you get in 2 years of white supremacy. Biden and the left pretend they are an existential threat. It's just a stupid clown show. They use it as an pretext to cancel conservatives. Won't work. Wow. Soledad O'Brien goes to Capitol Hill. She seems to hate everything and everybody, but I will try to keep an open mind and hear what she has to say at the McCarthy hearings today.
Mark Simonini Biden is like a bad substitute teacher. The cool teacher was Trump and we miss him. https://tcofj2680. The conversation about race in America is shallow and silly and mostly dishonest, so I'm starting a new and serious conversation on https://tcofja15jkeybh. My guest is author Charles Love CDOUGLESLOVE3, who speaks boldly about the prejudice of woke elites.
Everybody used to ride the subway in New York, rich or young or old. Now for the most part those who can afford it take a cab or Uber. Divisions and resentments increase. https://tco7bhtux for speed.
Wait, sold it. Brian worked at Osama bin Laden friendly Al Jazeera and now she's gonna lecture us on extremist content. I know it's a complicated world and some great people work there, but if she wants to play this game we can too.
Why the hell is Joe Biden sticking his hand in the fireplace? https://tco5wt9bdxy1q.
Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table to figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care.
This no-name lawmaker wants to be the next Senator Joe McCarthy, Republican of Wisconsin. I think his name might be Doyle. https://tco6rotipggw8. She is great. Kathy Morris. Just when it feels like the country is going complete insane, this patriot stands up and says enough. Thank you. https://tcoudswugq for it.
Another hero, Bob Blotta. Thank you. https://tcoufcqf90lpg.
Why the hell is she there? Congress has no business either enacting her proposals or blocking them. https://tcodoa8vir32y. Tired of Congress exploiting sad stories in their quest for power? This hearing is more dangerous than anything they are complaining about. https://tcockym3c3ur. So we are going to let this person, Emily and Soledad, figure out what's true and not true, what's good and bad, along with the Rand Corporation and Pew and Media Matters. https://tco9krzacqeb4y.
Emily says there should be a right to hear good information and a fire blanket should be thrown on content she disagrees with. Amelia, stick to that faculty lounge in that ivory tower. https://tcorjh4shppuj.
Soledad seems really touchy. Don't book liars. That sounds great. Who determines that? Who says who's lying or not? This is a slippery slope.
This is Brett3 and I like him as Congress comes out guns blazing for conservative media. He raises crucial issues including that good informed people experts included can disagree. https://tcowl2b10x2.
Turley trusts citizens to make decisions. https://tcoffkh78ulock.
Incredibly shallow. https://tcozeneas05cxh.
Major statement on the presidential dog situation soon.
My full statement on the Biden dog situation. This should put the entire matter to bed. Facts matter. https://tcoma0 okck.
Soldad lectured Congress today about truth.